We all know how expensive fancy hardware can be, so why not make our own using some plain cheapo hardware bases and polymer clay, of course. Now I will give you more information if you want to switch the colors here. This is just informative. So for measuring, use the clay on the thickest setting and the square cutter with a 1¼ inch side. Do your shaded part of the flower in a Skinner blend of the remaining yellow and burnt umber, and then divide the square of yellow in two, and on half of it make a Skinner blend with the 1/8 of ultramarine. Make both of them, you need the shaded flower into a cube, fan fold it into a cube, and the other one into a sheet about the thickest setting. Then sandwich the ultramarine on the thickest setting between white on the thinnest setting. Then cut your shaded flower part into 4 slices and place slices of black on the thinnest setting, not just between the slices of the Skinner blend of the shaded flower part, but also on the sides, and then reassemble the cube. Then triangularize the cube so it would be, the point would be on the shaded side, on the one that has the burnt umber, the darkest part. And then make a dip with something long. I'm using the cane benders of Tiny Pandora. Then place a piece of black on the thinnest setting on the remaining yellow and thin out one of the ends. And that end, make it into a spiral with the yellow outwards, and place that spiral into the dip that you have made in that triangle with the black part facing outwards. And now we shall cover the spiral part also with black and make sure that everything is well covered there, so you don't see any yellow except on the top. Now again, thin out a little bit at the ends the ultramarine and place it, as you can see, with a small cylinder log of black that you wrap the other end of the ultramarine sandwich slice, and then using another log of black fill in that little dip that's between the yellow spiral and the ultramarine spiral and any other dips that might be. Then grab your Skinner blend of yellow and blue and place it on the very top with the darker part being towards the spiral with the black log inside. And now we have our triangle that you need to reduce. And reduce it until you get you can get about a quarter of it and set it aside, and then keep reducing so we can make our round cane. Now what I was saying about using other colors, you want to keep this flower, but as a general idea I would not recommend you to switch the blue. If you don't like the ultramarine, use cobalt, because that gives the aspect and the feeling of antique porcelain. But if you want to change the colors of the flower, just go ahead and do so. You can use, for example, white instead of yellow everywhere. So whenever you change the white and the shading, make sure that you use the same thing. So let's say that you replace the yellow with the white and the ultramarine with the green. because that's what you want. Then the Skinner blend that you put on top will be of white and green, not of yellow and ultramarine. Still keep the black and the white the same. Now that you've gotten a mandala cane, because it was a doubled triangle that was then made into a 4 radial, and it creates an 8 spoke radius, so that would be a mandala, then go ahead and gently round it up. But very gently, press very gently so you don't distort those corners. And remember to flatten from time to time, because the clay will have the tendency to swell up in the areas where you push the corners in. And of course you can use any other cane that you want. If you want to give a more Victorian look, you can use, for example, my rose cane. That's a very pretty cane. Now let's take the quarter that we've put aside and start reducing it. This will be for the handle. The round cane is for the top of the middle of the knob. And keep reducing this until you can cut it into 4 manageable slices, and then place the slices alternating the direction of the triangle. And you can cut the end of one triangle, cut one of the end triangles in half and place it on the other end, so you'd have a perfect rectangle. And now keep reducing this some more so that you can cut it in 2 slices. Of course, you can make more cane if you are uncomfortable with slicing so thin. As you can see, I place it against my acrylic block, and that way the acrylic block holds it up enough to cut proper slices. Then mirror. What you need is for these two put together to be the perfect width to match the wooden part of the handle, the drawer handle pull. So as I said, you place them together to mirror. And once again, you can use a different cane, whatever you want. I do not have a regular cabinet door pull, because I would show you how to do one of those as well, but unfortunately I don't have any. Rectangularize your sheet properly, and then place some Bacon Bond on the wooden or metal part, if you found a cheaper one, of the drawer handle pull, and then place your slice around it, with the seam being towards the inner part of the handle. I'm sorry, I went a little bit off camera here because I couldn't see properly, but I'll bring it back. There you go. And then join the 2 ends together and blend the seams together nicely. And then use your roller to make sure that the ends go a little bit over the edge of the wood, over the little brass part, and that should be valid everywhere. But this is a relatively cheap drawer handle pull, so you can find all kinds of other models. I will post in the video description where you can get these, Lowe's, Home Depot. And then trim the excess clay right above we can call that a bezel if you want, the bezel of the handle. Trim very, very well, and then you can use your blade to refine the trimming, and then a small roller or paintbrush handle to round up and smooth the clay in that area. If it gets over that brass bezel, you can just trim it again. And do the same for both ends. It is easy to feel where it is. If you press a little bit on the clay in that area, it will shape itself after that brass bezel, and it will be very easy to see where you need to trim. And then again, refine the trimming with your blade. And then around that end up. And it looks pretty good. Now let's cut. I had to put the round cane in the freezer because it was getting very hot in here. Cut slices of your round cane and then place bacon bond on top of the knobs and smear it very, very well, and then simply place the cane slice and try to position it centered properly. As I said, it was very hot here, so it was quite hard to cut proper slices without deforming the cane. I did my best, and because this is a round top domed knob, it's very easy to shape the cane slice on it, but still use your roller to blend it and even it nicely and smooth it. After which, of course, we can go ahead and bake. So this is how they should look, sanded and buffed. And if you varnish, then do that at the very last step. I buffed, and I will put the handle aside because that is pretty much done. Now take a sheet of copper or whatever metal you want to imitate, and I have so many tutorials on metal imitation. And you will need both your wavy blades. Make strips with both of them. You will need 3 strips with the large wavy and 6 strips with the smaller wavy blade, because we are going to create a type of bezel around the knobs. And cut them again. It depends on what kind of knob you have. Here they are about 3 millimeters to 4 millimeters wide. And then of course excuse me, we will need bacon bond because we have wood there and baked clay. Now the first one to place will be the one that's cut with a large wavy blade, and again you can do all of them with a large wavy blade. It's very much up to you. Place bacon bond around the cane slice and then smear it really good in place, and then place your strip so it would form a bezel, exactly the same way that you would do a bezel around cabochon. And again, you need to do this on a thin, if possible the thinnest manageable setting on your machine. or maybe the second thinnest manageable, and then you treat it exactly like you would treat the bezel on a cabochon. Only that what we will do practically would be a multi-layered bezel. That, yeah, you can do that around the cabochon as well, but blend the two edges at the seam, and then use your roller to make sure it's well adhered, and of course fold the jagged part over the slice. Then place the next one a little bit below, at about 2 millimeters below the first one. And make sure you keep your lines straight. It's a good thing to pay attention to the wave of the jagged line, so you can match it perfectly at the seam. And once again, use your roller to get everything in place. And this time you're getting a little bit over the edge of the knob, so you want to make sure that the clay is well folded. As you can see, those little cane benders are absolutely awesome to use as tiny rollers as well. But yeah, you need to roll over and smooth everything to make sure everything is well adhered. Then again, cut a strip that should be about as wide as to cover the back of the knob itself, and coming down on the longish part of the knob. Place bake and bond, and then cut that strip a little bit in a diagonal. It's going to be easier to place. And then place it. Now it's up to you if you want to do this part into one strip, one wide strip, or two thinner strips. And once again, make sure it's well placed there. Here I chose to use two thinner strips, and it's fine if they are not perfectly, they don't have a perfect edge, it's just fine. Then what you do is you want to add some embellishments, and I will use for this number one, the tassels and borders of Best Flexible molds, one of the borders there. And then I will use, if you remember, I made a bezel mold in our last, the one before, no, the last one, the live event for that spring flowers brooch that I made the mold using actual chain and two lines with my rigid blade, and I will be using that for the other embellishment. As you can see, it comes up very nice. Of course, you need to make sure that you put there some release. And I'm going to put the thinner one right where the doorknob and the the drawer knob and the drawer base come together, and then blend nicely. And then I will be putting the thicker border right around the base of the knob, where it comes in contact with the drawer, the wood of the drawer. And again, make sure that you place it nice and in a line evenly. Cut it to dimension and then blend the ends at the seam. Again, it helps if you pay attention to the actual texture of the border because it makes things easier to match. And now we'll place the last jagged strip. If you try to place it before, it's going to get very messed up when you're working on the bottom part of the knob. And this one, you place it almost like a little flower, like a doily if you want, under the knob, so that the very end of the jagged line sticks out just a pinch. And again, trim the excess, pay attention to how the jags of the zigzags of the jagged line are, so you can blend fairly seamlessly, and then use whatever you want to use, the paintbrush handle, to smooth that in place. And once you're done, there's only one more thing to do, and that is to apply whatever mica you want to use. Here I'm trying to match the brass of the handle, so I'm going to mix together some Aztec gold and silver pearlex until I get the proper hue. And you can see I'm testing it on the back of my hand and compare it to the brass of the handle. And then you will have to use a paintbrush right where the jagged lines are, at the one that's at the very base, so you can make sure that there is mica in that little bit of a recess. But for the rest, you can just use your finger for the top part of the knob. For the base of the knob, you will need a paintbrush. And I received these really cute paintbrushes that are made special for applying powders from Trish, and they are just adorable, and they are very fine and excellent. I will put a link to them in the video description as well. But yeah, and then once you get all this done, it's time to bake again, of course. And now the last thing to do, of course, is to apply a varnish. I am going to use just glossy Minwax, water-based. Always get water-based, otherwise it will damage your clay. And first do the base, because otherwise it will be very hard to hold onto it. And then very gently do the bezel around the cane slice. After which you will have, of course, to reinforce that buff, because as many of you know, the buff kind of gets dull every time you bake a buffed piece and you need to re-buff it. And this is how it looks like. As you can see, very antique-y looking, and they can be applied even to pieces of antique furniture. Happy claying!